Welcome to Sister Science Stories, where every story is a sister science story. I wanted to welcome today my friend Chelsey Beda. Chelsey and I have just intersected in each other's lives for quite a few years now and have found just really a deep, beautiful friendship and connection. And we lean on each other when we need to flush something out, when we can feel something inside of us that just needs clarity and needs focus or just needs us to be able to speak it out loud so that we can find its clarity in our own lives. So welcome, Chelsey. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited.
Yeah. So I guess my very first question to you is tell us about sort of how you came to understand that there was more to healing than maybe traditional medicine had to offer, that there was something inside of you that was integral to the whole thing. Big question right off the bat.
hmm Well, I do like big questions and I like to get under the surface right away. So I think my story really starts on my health journey. I had three kids very, very young. So I had three kids by the time I was 25. And by the time I had my third child, I came down with two very powerful autoimmune diseases that made me feel like I was 90, trapped in a 25-year-old body. So I had Hashimoto's, which affects your metabolic processes, and it's where your body is attacking itself and the tissue in your thyroid. And then I had another autoimmune disease called Addison's, which affects your blood pressure and how your body uptakes salt. So basically, you pee out all your salt. You don't retain any of the salt. And so I had incredibly low blood pressure and incredibly low metabolism. And I couldn't like digest food. And at that time, I could not digest life either. So there was a number of things happening in my life, reflecting back now, that I know were like crucial in like bringing me to that point of disease. And that was my mom. I felt called by God, by like my higher self, to help her through rehab for alcoholism and addictive substances. And my dad and stepmom were not supportive of that and were not supportive of my choices. And so they made it very hard on me and wrote like some really nasty emails telling me what a bad mother I am and basically telling me like I'm a horrible person. And at the time also my husband was working away out of the country a lot. So I was trying to take care of my three children, take care of my mother, who I was traveling back and forth to Edmonton at the time, and eventually she did move closer. And it was like the shitstorm of shitstorms. I remember going into like Shoppers Drug Mart and taking my blood pressure one day, and it was so low that like it said I was basically dead. It was 60 over 40. I might be mixing those numbers up, but it was so low, like they're like basically like go to the hospital now. And I couldn't, because I had no support for my kids. Like I couldn't just go to the hospital. And I just remember bawling my eyes out. And I went to the medical system and they were able to help me a little bit, but not truly until I went to see a doctor who was a naturopath and a doctor at the same time. And he spent over an hour with me and he tested all sorts of things. And we finally kind of fleshed out that these autoimmune diseases were the problem. And just going to my regular doctor, we got nothing because I looked healthy. On the outside, I looked like a healthy 25-year-old. On the inside, things were not the case.
Right. Right. So you did find some support to help you sort of give perspective or acknowledge that something was going on inside of you. Okay. So then talk about your healing journey. How did you wind your pathway to health from that spot?
So the first step was working with this doctor and naturopath, and he was in the belief that thyroid disease is prevalent in our entire society. So when they track normal numbers for thyroid disease, that is also with the diseased population in that number. So an optimum number for like thyroid is not actually optimum for everyone, right? Like it's still in that diseased range. So we worked with like doing blood testing and then bringing my thyroid level up to a normal level. And then I took medication for my blood pressure, which helped dramatically, but it didn't cure things. And I was still in a lot of physical pain. I still had migraines every day. And so that's when I started going and using alternative modalities like traditional Chinese medicine, um, abdominal massage. Abdominal massage was huge. Like I would get 5 days of relief with abdominal massage. And, I was just exploring, experimenting, and little by little, like each thing made it better. It took about 10 years to start to feel normal again, which is a really long time.
So tell me when, because everything you've described, they start to be more, I guess, natural modalities. But when did you turn inward? When did you start going, there's power in me. It's not just about external protocols, external modalities, external experts helping me heal. There's something inside of me that's a key to this healing.
So that took a lot longer. It's not that I wasn't introspective, I very much was, but being raised in a dysfunctional family where there was like a lot of emotional abuse and a lot of like unhealthy relationships, I learned to like not speak. I would just not speak and I would hide in the background and I'd try to basically not move and not stuck in the freeze response, right? So I was really stuck in the freeze response until I was about 40. And then I hit my midlife crisis where I could not take it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I was in relationship with friends and family members who I absolutely despised on the inside, but because these had been longstanding relationships, I felt like obligated to be in relationship with them. And it was really just a trauma response. Like as a child, I didn't have a choice to have a different family. That's not an option, right? So you learn the tools you need to stay safe in those environments. And I had no idea that operating system was still existing long into my adulthood, operating in the background without me knowing. So when I kind of reached my boiling point, which was around 40, I felt this untamable rage. Like absolute rage. And there was this one experience, we were camping with some friends and I was really angry because there was some people that I didn't really like. I obviously did like a lot of them, but there's some people I really didn't like and I had some major issues with. And I remember my son saying like, "Mom, I can see you're angry all the time. You should do something about it." And I was like, whoa, because one, I thought I was like hiding it really well. Clearly it wasn't. And two, like my son doesn't ever say stuff like that. Like he's very quiet himself. So for him to like notice that and observe that, it was like, whoa, like one, that was a read. And two, we better do something about this.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that sounds like kind of a pivotal moment in realizing there's something else. So what did you decide was the something else to soothe that? I mean, Ayurveda would go to the word pitta and the fact that when anger and irritation and boils over, when the fire gets too big, it causes disease. And
So
clearly you were trying to stuff it down, but it was still like people were still aware of it. So what was the turning point then? Or what was
well,
the action?
if you think of like, being repressed over time, you create a lot of pressure, right? That pressure builds. And I had to figure out like what it was. What is this rage? Because when you have a feeling like rage, it is so consuming. Like to actually find clarity in rage is very, very difficult. So my first thing was like writing and journaling. I've always been a journaler, and typically in the past, I wouldn't journal unless I had no other option and I was like at my rope's end. But I started developing a habit of journaling like every day, or, at least a few days a week. And through the process of writing out my feelings and not censoring it, not filtering it, allowing whatever I was feeling to be raw, to just pour out on the page, what I realized was the rage was just like the top layer.
Mm.
Rage is covering something else, and that is deep sadness and grief. And to process my deep sadness and grief, I had to name it and lay it all out and really observe it and try to understand it and relate to it. And we don't have examples of people doing this in real life. Like, this is the messiest stuff. This is your dirtiest laundry. These are your most shameful parts, the parts that we literally want to cut off from ourselves. And the funny part is, like, when I was deep in my autoimmune diseases with my migraines, I would literally think about cutting off my head. I would want to, like, not to kill myself, not to unalive myself, but to, because it was so painful. I was like, if I could just cut off this limb, my head, I would be better. It sounds so stupid.
Can you tell me more about that then? Because I want to, like, you're describing this process of your emotion, like untangling emotions and seeing the layers and stuff like that. And it's messy and it's hard and all of that's going on. What is the physical opposite equal? So as this journey of like being really messy and the emotions is happening, what's happening with your health?
So
Like,
at that time, during the rage, I had frozen shoulder. I literally just graduated from massage school. I had frozen shoulder, so I couldn't work. And I was so pissed off because I literally spent 2 years going to school to work. And then all of a sudden, my body's like, nope. So it was really like, I always believe that like physical pain is an expression of what's going on the inside. So I had to dive in and explore what that is and kind of bring the unconscious into awareness, right? And when you do that, it's incredibly vulnerable and painful. But as you start to get to know it and observe it, it changes and dissipates. Now, this did not happen in a day. You got to think this is 40 years of buildup. This isn't a one experience buildup. This is compounded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You could literally think of it like a bad investment, right?
Yeah.
How do I fix this bad investment?
Yeah.
And so through bringing my unconscious into my awareness, I realized I needed to speak up for myself and defend myself. Like my family would just literally bulldoze over me. Even if I was like very diplomatic and brought these things, like they would just bulldoze over me. Bulldoze. They're used to using me. They're used to using me as a resource. And, but it wasn't reciprocal.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized I would rather be dead. And this sounds extreme. I'd rather be dead or live in a cardboard box than live like that anymore. And so I separated from my husband. And we basically burned our marriage down to the ground and we rebuilt it. Mm. But I needed that separation for me, one, so I could really step in and operate as myself. And also, I actually had the full intention of leaving completely. But there were some changes that happened that I could see like, oh, like if this is real, mm-hmm. I could see us getting back together in the future, which would really be like a real waste of resources to kind of like divide all your assets and then bring them back together. And the real issue was just like the balance in our relationship and the power differential, right? Like we should have an even yoke. We're not the same people, we don't do the same things, but there should be an even mutual respect, and we should each uplift each other. And that change happened, and I'm very happy to say it's been lasting, and I have no regrets um, since that experience.
So there was something that you started to give voice to inside of yourself that previously you hadn't been giving voice to. You'd been letting all the, stories and everything from your origin family come into your marriage, and then you weren't voicing your own needs or your own,
Right.
uh, yeah, like your own authentic truth. And then when you started to separate from husband, but then started to have all these big conversations, it just broke apart. And when you said, I separated from my husband, but then we burned our marriage down and then rebuilt it, was that rebuilding able to happen because you came with a new, I'm going to say, vulnerability and courage to speak something really real inside of you, and to bring all this messiness and emotions and all the layers of you into this relationship?
I want to say not exactly.
Okay.
I When I work on myself, I do it very privately. I don't like to talk about it when I'm in the moment. I don't mind talking about after. I'm totally fine after. But in the moment, I can't talk about it, and not even to like my closest people. It feels like vomiting, and I have a deep fear of vomiting.
Right.
Right? Like it's like the most shameful part of you being like, here, look at this. And part of that is like I was the scapegoat and the black sheep of the family. So what happened was I set very strong and clear boundaries that I was not willing to surrender for anyone. Because truly, before, I was a person that bent every direction just to fit in and belong and be loved. And part of it was like I just wanted to be loved, right? And I feel like very loving and generous. Like I just give that freely, and I always want to be that way. But now we don't give love freely if someone's going to shit on you. Like you don't do that. That is not honoring yourself. And I wouldn't want anyone to be treated that way. No one, you know?
Okay, so self-honoring then. Self-honoring means holding your own boundaries, being responsible to hold your own boundaries. I want to fast forward because I know your story. So you, a couple of years ago, you hiked the Pacific Crest Trail,
Mhm.
and it was a big, like, I'm going to say 6 months, you went away. And I mean that, and when I think about changing patterns and asking for what you need and declaring, what you're going to do, that feels like a huge momentous step in the process. Can you just give us some insight into the um, intention and even the results of that experience?
Yes. All right. So in 2022, I hiked the Pacific Crest Trail, and how that came to be was, I went from being a kid to being a mom. And then after that, I lost my identity in other people. I've always like merged with other people and coexisted, rather being independent and like autonomous. And I actually love independence and autonomy. Like it feels so good to me. And my kids were at the point where they were becoming adults and starting to leave the nest. And I'd never done anything for myself. I never, had any cool experiences like going to college or even going on trips. Like I literally was very domestic and like a well-kept woman
Mhm.
my entire life. And that actually did not fit with who I actually am. It's not that I don't mind the domestic life. Like I truly love being a mother and a wife, but there's an equal part of me that loves adventure and exploration and the outdoors and nature. And so my first, I want to say, rebellion was in 2020, and that was hiking alone. My whole life, people have been like, you can't hike alone. It's unsafe. And I want to say for most of the population, that's probably true, but I have thousands upon thousands of outdoor experience, like hours in the outdoors with animals, etc. And so I started to hike alone. I would bring my bear spray, I would have a satellite communicator, and I would hike alone. And I felt like $1,000,000 when I got back. And so I started just doing that on the regular for myself, and it felt incredible. And I'd always had a dream since I was a teenager to go like on like hiking trips, and I always was just at home waiting for someone to invite me. And so I basically wasn't living my life because I was waiting for someone to like live it for me, and that wasn't working anymore. So I started to dream up of like hiking, and I was watching all these videos online of through hiking. And I'm like, what is this thing called through hiking? There's the Pacific Crest Trail, there's the Continental Divide Trail, and there's the Appalachian Trail. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. Like, what if I could do that one day? And I was like, no, there's no way. There's no way. But as I started talking to my husband about it, and like sharing him my like dreams and aspirations, he was like, you should do it. You should do it. And I was like, really? And then I was really afraid as we started to kind of like look into this possibility that he was going to revoke it from me because, you know, I've been baited so much in childhood. Here's this little thing I'm going to give you. It's so nice. And then when the time comes, oh, you know, we don't have the money for it, or, oh, I'm too tired, or whatever. Basically, you just don't get it ever. So I thought it was going to be baited and switched, but that never ever happened. And it really did build trust and rapport with my husband as we started to rebuild our relationship. And obviously, this is pretty extreme. Not a lot of people are doing like these big moves or big changes. So the day comes and I begin my hike, and it literally is everything I ever dreamed of. He joined me for the first week, so that was really wonderful. He got to experience it a little bit with me, and there really is a culture and a funness that comes with it. It feels like adults going to summer camp, basically. And there's a community and a friendship that you develop that really lasts like a lifetime. So I did almost the entirety of California, so 1,500 miles, and I don't know what that is in kilometers, but it's a lot. 1.6 miles per every, or 1.6 kilometers per every mile. And at the end of California, a series of fires popped up through California and Oregon that prevented me from keeping on going because I didn't want to be stuck with like no place to sleep or camp or go to the bathroom like that. So I decided, you know, I'm going to continue the journey in my own way. I got off the trail and went to the Oregon coast and hiked the Oregon coast. And then I was like, you know, it'd be kind of fun to like cycle. And this was like a point where I would never have ever done any of this before. But I was like, I'm just going to call my husband and see if he can fly up my bike and all my bike packing gear. And I'm going to cycle Washington State by myself. And so he did. We met up in Portland. We had a great weekend together. And he was also working in Washington during that time frame. So I was able to cycle and see him for a few days. And that's where the real adventure began, because now I was outside of my community of friends. I was really on my own. I was back into the world. What I realized was I can't do this all alone. Like it's too sad and lonely. And so there was a few scenarios where I had to lean on people. And one of the, I discovered this thing called warm showers, which is basically like a couch surfing app for cyclists.
Right.
And so you can, they basically, it's like Airbnb. You can see what they have to offer, whether it's like a couch or a room or a separate space, and washroom access, whether they, make a meal or whatever. It works great. So I used that and I had some really positive experiences. But then sometimes you think you're going to get to a destination at a certain time and you either can't make it or you can't find accommodations on short notice. This is summer. Things do get fully booked. I literally had nowhere to go. And so I drive into the town, or on my bike, like into town, and I go to get ice cream because I am feeling sorry for myself. So we have some ice cream, and then we're like, okay, I'm going to go to the visitor center and just ask if they know of any place I can set up, like if it's a church or anything, because I'm basically shit out of luck. I've been riding all day. I literally physically cannot go any further. And asking for help is probably the most vulnerable thing I can do. Like, I hate asking for help. And part of it is because as a child, my needs would never be met. So like I would do absolutely everything I could on my own to satisfy my own needs. But the truth is, like, you can't do that. We're literally meant to be in community with people. And so like I had to be brave enough to ask for help. So I show up to the visitor center and there's like 4 women working there. And immediately I start bawling, like because I'm so vulnerable. Like, here, I feel like I'm homeless. I feel like it's my own fault for needing this help. And it is true. Like, I wanted to go there. And the ladies like literally just like came around me and they're like, oh, like it's okay. And this one lady, she's like, I used to work at the campsite in town and they used to let cyclists camp after 6 p.m. for like $10 just on the grass. She's like, do you want me to call for you? And I was like, yes, please. And so she called, they like gave me a popsicle and like water. Like they literally mothered me and I really needed it at that moment. Um, and then as I was like sitting, just waiting, kind of like calming down, one of them came up to me. She's like, you know what? A year ago, my husband died and I cried every day. Like, oh, it makes me so emotional just talking about it. And it just really touched me that she shared that with me because I can't imagine what that would be like and the pain. And for her to share that with me, like as in a way to like comfort and like kind of mediate the situation that my situation seems so trivial compared to hers, so trivial, which just really, really touched me.
Mm-hmm.
So these experiences that I was really afraid to do, really afraid, um, really got me in touch with my humanity and like true human connection.
Hmm. I mean, as you're telling the story, I'm thinking of the ways that when we come in contact with our intuitive, with our wisdom, we can see old patterns and drop them. And it's almost like this, when you talked about waiting for someone to invite me, I think about that idea of like, we're waiting for someone else to give us permission to live our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And you witness that in yourself as a pattern and a story, and then you dropped it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had a story or a belief that asking for help was possibly useless. Maybe like it doesn't ever get you anywhere. Or maybe
Mm-hmm.
your belief was that asking for help is vulnerable. But you noticed that asking for help was a story that you weren't allowed to do, and then you broke it.
Yeah.
So in everything that you've just told us, it's almost like you said, you're getting in touch with your own humanity. So I want you to bring us like to the present moment in that, like, so you've done a ton of work of sort of connecting to yourself, asking for what you need, um, creating pattern or creating practices around hiking by yourself and doing things solo and prioritizing journaling. I want to know what your health is like.
My health is most excellent.
Like that's to me,
Yeah,
there's the miracle. Like you said, like
yeah.
the first 10 years you spent sort of seeking out those external things. And to an extent, it got you back, to base camp where you could function from. But would you say that the healing was about you being in touch with you and breaking the old stories and patterns?
Absolutely. After my husband and I separated and we got back together, my Hashimoto's went into complete remission. And I found this out because all of a sudden I was in hyperthyroid from taking my medicine. I'm like, I can't focus and I like my eyes aren't working and like I was feeling really like agitated, but in a like I had too much caffeine way, right? And so then I got my blood work and my blood pressure was high for once. And like I had way too much thyroid in my system. So I stopped taking that medication. And then that was like a point where I realized, oh my God, like all my life, and also even in the holistic world, they're preaching you need to change your diet, you need to be cleaner, you basically need to have these like very pious
Mhm.
health practices, which makes you really boring. And not that they're bad, okay? I want to say they do work, but none of them brought my thyroid into complete remission. But the healing of burning down my marriage and then rebuilding it with mutual respect did.
Like that to me is the power of this balance of Mr. Science and Sister Science. Like you've just explained it, that it was you like coming home to you and
Mhm,
your needs and honoring them and setting boundaries and asking and telling and giving voice to this to you, making room on your plate for your own self to be there.
mhm,
That was the healing.
mhm. Yeah, it was basically
So,
giving myself permission to exist as myself, which seems so simple, but like if you're conditioned, and I feel like all women are conditioned to a point to be good.
yeah,
And good, what does good mean? Is that good just for the other person? Or
yeah,
is it good for both of you mutually? Or is it good for you? Right?
yeah.
It all comes down to power differential, right? Like one should not be up here and one should be down here. It doesn't mean that there isn't hierarchies in the world, because we do kind of need structures through hierarchies, but what it means is like there is no one disrespecting and oppressing the other, right?
And sometimes I feel like we have a story about being disrespected and oppressed,
Mhm.
which might be true, or we are not honoring
Yes,
and asking to
yes,
be respected and asking
yes,
to be, yeah. And so
yes.
as soon as we rise up and say, wait a second, boundary goes into place, or like like I will not be treated that way. This is how I am meant to be treated, and this is the space I'm asking for. As soon as we do that, then it's not so much that we're being disrespected, but we're asking to be held in regard.
It's called self-respect.
It's called self-respect. Oh my God. You're right. Okay, so you just said something that I was laughing about a little bit, like these ideas that we have in the holistic community of like we have to eat this really clean diet and we have to, and I preach these things. I preach
Mhm,
about getting
mhm.
good sleep, managing your energy, and nourishing yourself properly. And I believe that we all have practices that when we do the practices, we connect deeper to that innate wisdom in us. We connect to it. And when we're not doing the practices, we can fall into our old patterns pretty easily again. So I'm just curious for you. it's not eating the right diet. It sounds to me like maybe some of your practices are journaling and maybe hiking alone. Like, what would you say are the things that keep you connected to your self-respect, keep you connected to yourself?
So yeah, the journaling, the hiking alone, but also like your intuition is telling you something new every day. If
Yeah.
you just check in, once in a blue moon, you're not going to be in touch with what is wanting to be spoken through you every day, right? So it's a relationship with yourself, but it's also a relationship with a higher power. You can
Yeah.
call it source, you can call it God, whatever you want. It's not a religion. It literally is with something bigger than you outside of yourself.
Yeah.
And so when I align with that, like I just feel yoked and very balanced, but it doesn't mean I have to be a pious nun. Like I actually get to live a really fun, satisfying life that gives me incredible joy. And
So,
like,
so if they're not pious actions, what are they? Like what keeps you checking in? What does the check-in look like? Is it like a 5 minute, hey Chelsey, what do you need right now? Or hey Chelsey, what's up? What's going on? Like what is it? What keeps you connected to that?
well, one, my intentionality, but two, it is the journaling. I want to say
Okay.
the journaling and also being in nature alone. Like when you're in your home, you're surrounded by people. When you're in your work, you're surrounded by people. I am very influenced by the people in my circle. So, how do I know I'm operating in myself? I need solitude. And for me, solitude is journaling. I'm not journaling with other people with me,
Yeah.
it's going out in nature. And this can be unique for every individual, and not every individual needs solitude like I need solitude, right? We are all created completely differently. It's like a plant from Arizona is not going to thrive in the Rocky Mountains here, and a Rocky Mountain spruce isn't going to thrive in the desert floor in Arizona.
Yeah.
The one size fits all programs do not work because we are not all the same. We are very different.
Yeah. And
So
so and so you've recognized that solitude is a big piece of being able to connect. So how do you, and this is one of the things I find so interesting is how do we ask for what we need? So have you communicated that need for solitude to the people who like sort of circle around you in your life?
this is a hard one because solitude is sometimes frowned upon, and not like if you just call it solitude, but when you actually are in your family dynamics or even friend dynamics, especially like say you're traveling in groups with people. I
Yeah.
really struggle with that because I get very nervous in cars with people. And it's mostly because I feel claustrophobic, like I don't have choice on where we're going or what we're doing. And it's, again, it goes down to childhood things of feeling trapped. It has nothing to do with driving or like the safety experience. It has to be with like, I don't have a voice to like have a say, right? And so when you pull away from a group, often people will think, oh, you don't like us, or oh, like she's rude, or something like insert word of choice. Honestly, there's many different things. And so I have to honor myself and be okay with basically being called those things, or people thinking whatever stories they want, because honoring myself is my highest priority and like my well-being in general. So do I want to honor my well-being or not? And the truth is sometimes I don't, because it's easy to kind of get caught up in the flow of being with people, and like there's always going to be a people pleasing tendency in me. But when I know when I've had too much peopling,
Yeah.
and it's because my face doesn't want to face anymore, and like I literally want to like frown or do like really judgy looks, and it literally isn't me judging people. It's like I've had enough and I actually am full and I need the solitude to kind of decompress.
I love that because it is like it's almost the human experience, right? It's like uh, we go in, and when it becomes in excess for us, which, like you said, is a different point for everyone, when
Mhm.
whatever we're doing becomes in excess for us, we need to balance it with the opposite. So for
Yes.
you, what you find is that the more you can allow and honor the need for solitude, then it allows you to have the capacity to go back in and come back out again.
Yeah.
So there's this balancing piece that you're doing, and that's the human
Yeah.
experience.
And we're
Like
always in flux,
we're
right?
always in flux. And like you said, like there's some times where I'm really good at honoring myself. And to be fair, within my own home is the place where I feel like I have the most routine, the most structure, the most control. And then
Yeah.
as soon as you are on vacation or your routine changes or something comes in to sort of knock things around a bit, that's when we lose our patterns that keep us in health, and we have to notice when oh, it's feeling aggravated again, this is feeling in excess again, and we bring ourselves back to balance with, for you, solitude and journaling, and those things are the things that bring you back into balance. Oh, so good.
Among other practices too, right?
Yeah, so is there anything else you want to mention?
I want to say I really love Kundalini yoga and breath work, also meditation,
Yeah.
and just exercising in general. Exercising is just a great discharge for any emotional residue that's stuck to you that isn't yours,
Yeah.
including your own emotional residue.
Yeah. Like you said at the beginning, I think you said something like, I wasn't digesting life very well when you were talking about your three kids and taking care of your mom and the emotions of your dad and stepmom that weren't in line. Like when you were just saying, I wasn't digesting that situation very well at all, and disease was building in my body. And so now you've sort of created a life where you digest all your experiences, and it sounds like you're a little bit more discerning about what
Yeah.
experiences you get yourself involved in, or you allow, or you choose to step into. Like that you so there's a greater discernment, a
Mhm.
guarding of your energy, and there's better digestion happening.
I want to say, like, as far as discernment goes, I want to always be open to possibilities. But as soon as I know and have felt that, like, there's something isn't right, or there's like a power indifference where, like, there's like some negative talk or about me, that's just a sign this relationship is not meant to be. It's time to walk away. I'm ready to walk away from relationships much faster than I ever was before. But it's because I know what true alignment in relationships feel like. And when that exists, it's just so beautiful.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that we aren't human and have flaws in that alignment and existence too, right?
Yeah. Okay, so Ayurveda, and I use the word ojas all the time, like your capacity to hold life. So it sounds to me your story is that like in the early days of three children and nursing an alcoholic mother and dealing with other external family that's negative, your ojas was crumbling a little, and your capacity
Yeah.
to hold life felt very like, burst into tears. I don't know what to do, sort of stuff. Then you broke things down, you rebuilt things. And I want to talk about your ojas right now. Like, tell me the things you are building right now.
Okay. So I feel like I'm in a really exciting time of my life. I'm opening up my new business on Monday, and it is massage therapy that specifically deals with pain and injury and also stress. So that's very physical. We don't really dive into any psychological stuff. That's really out of my scope as a massage therapist. But through my journey, I've really known, like, as I get in touch with what's in my subconscious and bringing it to awareness, I get to see what is true and what's not true, and kind of decondition myself from the things that aren't mine and don't belong to me, and how to live in my authentic truth. And so there's two systems that I am learning that I'm about to launch very soon that I want to work with people with, and that is human design and astrology. So what that does is when you're born, and also 3 months before you're born, it kind of sets a design date of your personality and like your body design, which I want to call the embodiment piece. And so we can look at your chart and see, especially for people who feel a little bit lost or aren't in touch with like who they are or want to discover more of that. We can see where your values lie, where is a really good environment for you to thrive, what kind of people or dynamics like introverted, extroverted really work for you, and just some core themes of your life. And so it's literally like a roadmap on like where you're going and also how to live in the practices that best make you thrive in the here and now.
I love that. I feel like when I say the word sister science, I'm talking about the things that connect you to your authentic self. And they
Mm-hmm.
are sometimes things that are kind of veiled in mystery. They're a little bit unknown.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like when I'm working with things like astrology or human design, especially when you and I have talked about human design, the you tell me things that resonate as true for me, but that I might not be working with consciously. And
Exactly.
that's where I find its power comes in because sometimes when we are getting to know our authentic selves, it's such a foreign process to us because this idea of inward connection hasn't been prioritized in our culture. So we've never learned to do it. And as we learn how to do it, these tools, so Ayurveda talks about your innate constitution, your astrology talks about your natal chart, human design talks about your human design, I guess your human design chart, but they give us a lens through which we can view and give words and structure to that authentic self within us. And it is just another tool to connect us to our yin, our sister, our feminine, our intuitive, authentic, wise, deep, knowing self.
Really, yeah, it's just like a way to use like story and metaphor and align with what resonates with you. So you can just move forward in a more empowered way and feel resourced, right?
Yeah.
People don't need to know astrology and human design to live aligned with that. But if you're feeling like you aren't quite in alignment, it can really open the door and help
Yes.
you see where that possibility lies.
I,
And same with Ayurveda, right? All of these practices, they're leading the same way. They're just different ways to do it.
yeah. Oh, Chelsey, I
Yeah.
feel like we're almost in an hour, so we should probably start to wrap up. But I want to thank you for sharing your story because to me, when we start to understand that the healing is this balance of our ability to get care and attention from external experts
Mhm.
and giving equal and full regard to the truth inside of us. And you said something about, I made space in my life for me.
Mhm.
That healing isn't possible until that sentence takes place. You
Yeah.
have to be on your own priority list and you have to be able to go into, I don't know, like when you first started talking about, you were like, it was messy.
Mhm.
And like
Mhm.
that messiness and the dismantling of
Mhm.
the old stuff sometimes is pretty raw and vulnerable. And
Yeah.
it's super courageous, but it's fraught with fear and shame and anger. When you
Mhm.
talk about, I felt like I was boiling. It can be
Mhm.
fraught with those old stories and patterns. But as you dismantle them, you can create a new foundation to grow something new on. And that's where the healing comes from.
Yes. Yeah.
Can you wrap it all up for us, Miss Chelsey?
It's my highest goal that people can live a resource life and live in their joy,
Mm,
not be afraid to live in their joy. Because I think, my younger self was if I'm happy, people try to rob it or stamp it out because they don't like it. It makes them uncomfortable. And I think secretly it's only because they want that too. But I feel like this is for everybody. We should all feel resourced and be able to live in our joy. even though there's hard things that do happen in life, that doesn't mean that it's going to prevent us from never feeling resourced and living in that place, right?
Yeah. Oh, well, I have to just commend you. You have a gorgeous story of healing. And I haven't been alongside of it for very long, but I would say it's probably 8 or 10 years now. And
Yeah.
it has been beautiful to witness, and it's been inspiring to witness. And I do really believe that you hold that sort of flame of authenticity, and your light invites us all to shine our lights. Yeah. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate this conversation.
Thanks, Jill. Thanks for having me. Ciao.